Welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Join us here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first. A manufacturing engineer turned writer, David E. Patterson's first project after he retired was to honor his dad with his book, A Gentleman by Act of Congress, Memoirs of a Foot Soldier in World War II.
I had just had a surgery and then I retired, and my family was kind of egging me on to do something along these lines. They always liked me as a storyteller. So I picked up what my dad had written and decided it needed to be published.
Your dad wrote this book?
Well, he wrote stories, and I put them into third-person format.
Okay.
My dad did not graduate high school, so his writing style was not usable in printed form, so I had to put everything into my words.
That must have been an arduous task.
It was. I would have to read a bit, study on it for a week or so, and then put it on paper.
Wow. What does the title mean, A Gentleman by an Act of Congress?
One thing my dad taught me when I was growing up, on his battlefield commission promotion that he received, it said on the form, United States Congress, it said, officer and a gentleman by Act of Congress. And that stuck with me. And that's why I used that. And I used the whole book to point out how throughout his years in the military, he maintained his own personal morality, and his choices kept him kind of above the rest.
Give me an example of one of those choices.
There's one story in the book where a French mother and her daughter took him and his sergeant, his driver, home with them for a dinner. And later more soldiers showed up in a half track, and so they invited them into dinner and shared their meager amount of food. But upon putting all the other soldiers to sleep in the living room, they led my father up to the woman who lived there, the younger woman's bedroom, and told him that's where he was going to sleep. Well, he woke up the next morning, and the young woman was in bed with him, and her baby was in a bassinet next to the bed, and her mother was asleep on the floor. And my dad, he didn't think he had drunk that much. They had champagne. And he decided that these ladies gave everything they had to these men, and it wasn't immoral. There was nothing that went on that was immoral. And he likened it unto the story in the Bible of the widow's mite. And I admired him for that kind of gentlemanly mastering of himself. He did what was right always.
How long was he in Europe?
In 1939, he joined the National Guard in Texas, Houston, Texas. They went to Europe in 1942. They landed in North Africa. The Italians surrendered, and then they invaded Italy. They fought up the boot of Italy through the mountains, and that's where the Texas Army gained its notoriety and its fame. They beat the crap out of the Germans over the mountains. And they took a lot of crap too. A lot of men were killed. From there, they pushed on into Rome, and then they got pulled out, and they took part in Anzio, the Battle of Anzio.
Okay.
And they invaded southern France. So about 5 weeks after D-Day, the Normandy invasion, about 5 weeks beyond that, they invaded southern France and caught the Germans in between two armies and pushed them back into Austria and then Germany. And he fought all the way through that up until 1945 when they surrendered.
That's amazing. He survived all that.
It is. He started out as a supply sergeant in a supply company, and they had to do a lot of amazing things to get food, ammunition, clothing, and mail to the soldiers on the front line.
Yeah. And he shared these stories with you throughout your life?
He shared them with me, and then late in life, he wrote them down.
Oh, I see.
He wrote his whole life's history, actually, and he left that for me and my sisters. And I chose these military years. I wanted newer generations to understand what kind of people, men and women, that were in the greatest generation.
Yeah.
And their records got burned up. Our government has no record of what these people did. Almost all of the people on the ground in Europe, the government's records are gone.
So this really is a piece of history here.
Yes. Like I said, I want younger generations to understand what came before them. I want them to understand so they don't repeat it.
Yeah, well, don't we all? Don't we all want that? I just finished reading a book on Roosevelt, all of his years as president, and it really was a phenomenal time in our history, and what America was able to accomplish, going from having like no planes, no military really, to having a military that defeated the Nazis.
And the Japanese.
It was a remarkable time in our history.
Yes, it was.
So are you going to go out and talk about your book? Do you want to see it in schools, colleges, history classes?
Yeah, I would like that. I've been a substitute teacher before in our local schools.
Oh, you should go in and do a talk.
That's a good idea. I immediately went to our local public library and they bought it.
Will they let you do a book signing there?
Yeah, they will if I ask them to.
When are you going to do it?
Good idea. Good idea.
Yeah. So now are you going to keep writing?
I have already written more books.
How many more?
5 more books, and I'm working on another one.
Great.
4 of them are stories about a detective, and they all involve historical events that you don't want to repeat.
Great. Historical fiction.
Yes.
Great. Good for you. Look at you in retirement.
Yeah, I'm keeping my mind busy.
Well, thank you for sharing this with me.
You bet.
Imagine a world with no electronics. Samson Gruss does in his book, A Mountain of Beans. All right, so you're a trucker, which explains why the 2 main characters in your book are truck drivers. And talk to me about the development of this story.
Well, this book started out as a short story. I got an idea for a short story I thought would make a good short story. I wanted to set up a very complex situation with no resolution. Just end the story. Just set up the situation and then end the story. So I did that, and I thought about it as I was walking to work. I walked to work back then. I thought about it as I was walking to work, and I finally sat down and typed it. I almost typed itself. And then I read it, and I was like, yep, that's what I want to do. I just set up this very complex situation with no resolution. And I decided to myself, I said to myself, if I expect the reader to resolve these issues, then I should be able to resolve them, at least to my satisfaction. So I made that short story chapter 1 and started on chapter 2, read to chapter 3, and so on before you do it at a short novel.
You said this came about, a few years ago?
Yeah.
Like how long ago?
Like 10 years ago.
So what made you decide to publish it now?
Well, I put it aside, and every 6 months or so I'd pick it up and read it again and make little changes. So I wanted to wait until I didn't make any changes anymore, so I knew it was done. And then I gave it to some friends and some relatives, and they read it and were very positive about it. I thought, well, maybe I could make something off of it. I could sell it, maybe make some money off it. And that's why I published. I thought I could make something. I thought I could make a profit, turn a profit.
There you go. So tell me the story.
Well, it's about these 2 truckers who go through a magnetic polar reversal. You know what that is?
No, but you're going to tell me.
Okay, it's when the poles switch polarity. The north is positive and the south is negative, and the energy runs from negative to positive, and it creates what's called the magnetosphere, which surrounds the Earth, which is what makes a compass work.
Okay.
And they every so often in history they switch polarity. This is actual scientific fact. That's not science fiction. That's science fact.
Right.
They switch polarity. The north becomes negative, the south becomes positive, and a compass would point south. And that's what happens in my book. There's a magnetic polar reversal, and it ends up causing a massive power fire. Magnetic energy from the sun, electromagnetic radiation from the sun comes straight through it strikes the earth, where usually it goes around the earth like a water around a rock in a stream, usually because of the magnetosphere. Because the magnetosphere is broken, it's for a moment of flux. All that energy comes straight in and affects all electronics. It affects cars and trucks that have electronics, and the power lines are affected, batteries are, everything electronic is affected, and nothing works. Everything just stops.
And these two truckers are stuck on the roadway, and one of
Right.
them has a load of beans.
Right.
Well, that's how we came up with the title, A Mountain of Beans.
Well, that's a line from the book. There's a young girl in the store. Her name is Alex, and she's figuring out how many cans of beans are on the truck. And she multiplies it all out, and she comes up with 34,500 and some cans, 560 cans. She says, "Well, that's a mountain of beans." That's where the title comes from.
But these guys are worried about all of these people stuck on the highway.
Right.
And, they have plenty of beans, but it won't last forever.
Right.
So they have a moral dilemma here.
Right. They don't know how big the problem is. It could be just a small area. It could be the whole side of the planet facing the sun at a time. They don't know how big the problem is.
Right.
And there's no way to find out. It happens when they're pulling onto a scale, onto a weigh station is where it happens. And they talk to the scale master. He tells them what's around there, and they go walking to these places. They go to a dairy farm and a chicken farm.
For what?
Well, at first they're not really sure why they're going there, but they decide that's what they should do next. They decide that's what they should do next. And then they end up helping milk the cows and help gather the eggs, and they take them to an elementary school.
And there's people trapped in the elementary school.
Exactly. All the kids.
So it's about more than what to do with all these beans on a truck and whether or not to share it with people stranded on the highway.
Exactly.
So they decide what they're going to do.
Right.
Is there a moral to the story?
Well, I kind of want to show how dependent we are on the computer systems and transportation systems and communication systems. If they all failed suddenly and thoroughly, people would starve to death.
Yeah.
I mean, we are that dependent on the computer system.
We're that dependent on technology.
On technology, exactly. People would starve to death.
It would be crazy. Yeah.
It would be crazy.
All right. And we find out whether or not this is just a small, because in your book, we don't know if it's a small area affected or whether it's like half the earth.
Right. Exactly.
All right. Are you selling your book at truck stops?
Well, not yet. Not yet. I've sold 50 copies myself so far.
How'd you do that?
Just among friends and coworkers, family. I belong to the local library book club. We read a book a month, and we get together and discuss it. And I sold the book to them. We're going to discuss it. Everybody bought one, and we're going to discuss it.
When are you going to do that?
Not till January. The books are already assigned for the rest of this year. They're not until next year, or they're starting new books. So I sold like 15 copies right there.
That's great.
Yeah.
Good for you. Are you going to keep writing?
Well, I don't have any ideas right now for another story or anything just yet, but I hope to. Yeah, I enjoy the process. I really like putting my thoughts on paper and rearranging them and editing them and so forth. It's something I enjoy. It's a writing is the end in itself, and so I hope to get another idea. This idea came to me out of just kind of struck me over the head, this idea about the magnetic polar reversal. When I learned about it, I was like, oh wow, that could really cause some problems. And the next thing I know, I had a book.
That's great.
So I hope I get another idea like that.
All right. Well, I'll be here if you do.
Okay.
And I'll be ready to talk to you about whatever you come up with.
Okay.
Great. I enjoyed this, Sam. Thank you so much.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Dustin Cumer says writing is his passion. He liked English and writing when he was in school. He's written poetry, short stories, speeches, and now The King Within. So you're a life coach, and you say that's where the speech writing comes in.
That's correct. Being a coach and everything, I like to inspire people. I like to hit them where the feels are. So when it came to speech writing, I really enjoy writing something that's going to really move people.
Okay.
And I feel like I can do that in the form of speech writing.
So it seems like everything you've done has kind of led you to where you are today.
Yep. And I definitely, because this is a series, so there's going to be times without the story that there's some pretty big speeches from the hero. So
Okay. So where did this idea come from?
my life, honestly. I was inspired from it because I went through a really rough time, ups and downs throughout my life. I lost my mom to cancer. So I wanted to write something that was a documentary, but also something that would be relatable to people in a way that would help them find their purpose. So I wanted to create a story that kind of mirrored my life and how I thought of myself, knowing that I was destined for more. And so I kind of really integrated and entwined that into the storytelling.
So what'd you come up with?
I came up with The King Within, and it was it's a story about a teenager, who lost his mom. And, along the way, he discovers himself and his true purpose and finds out that it's probably one of the biggest purposes you could ever have. His name is Landon, and his journey basically starts with him and his dad in Ohio. And they moved there because, they lost his mom to cancer, and his dad actually, him don't have the greatest relationship, but his dad is in the military, in top ranks in the military. And he has a dog named Anna, and the companionship between him and his dog is kind of a core piece of the story, because that was all that he really had, best friend wise. He doesn't, people really liked him and stuff, but he was going through kind of a transitional phase at the beginning of the story. So they usually go out and explore the backwoods, and that's kind of like their thing after school, and to kind of keep his mind straight. And ends up falling into out in the middle of this field because they're in a new place in Ohio, and the dog kind of finds this hole in the middle of this flower field, and she goes down in there, and he can hear her barking, trying to find her, and he tries to go in after her and slips and falls and blacks out. And when he wakes up, there's no way to climb back out of the hole, and it's in a whole different world. And and then he figures out, he's trying to figure out where he's at, what's going on with this world, and it's a very dark versus light type of story. And that's where the story begins. So he's trying to find his way out. So when he exits the cave, because he's in a cave, and there's like a river in the cave, and it's going through these rocks, and you can see the light. So they explore further, and they realize that the gravity is extremely heavy. It's a very unknown place. And when they get out of this cave and they go to the top of this hill, and they can see the landscape, there is no sky. There's literally just this dark cloud above, and over the landscape you can see a mountain in the distance with light coming from the top of it. And then the rest of the world, there's some places with it's very biodiverse, tons of different animals and things from the prehistoric all the way up until now. So he's like, we're not in Kansas anymore, it's very different. So they start heading out into this world and realize that there's this like shadow that's kind of bleeding from the ceiling down into the world. And there's places where it's still light, but it seems like this shadow is consuming the world and pretty much making some parts of the forest darker than others. And So he starts venturing out and, tries to explore this world, and ends up that, like the actual darkness is caused by the evil that is from the above world. So he ends up needing lots of biblical references. He ends up, finding out, who he is. And this is just a teaser and a taster on, because I already have the second book written and the third book is outlined. So it's a 3-part series. The first part is to basically set the tone.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I believe there's a lot of dark stuff leaking from the world above right now.
Exactly.
I think there's a lot of dark stuff there.
Yeah, it's a very, it really has a lot of human nature in it. It's got, like I said, light versus dark.
You're all about helping people find their purpose.
That's true.
So is the search for your character's purpose still on? Do we find his purpose? Do we have to wait till the third book to find?
You find out his purpose, in this first book. You do realize who he is, or he realizes who he is. And basically the next book is going to really intertwine, and because there's a real big twist at the end of this. And when you realize kind of how he discovered it, it's kind of the secret of the first book.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but you will find out who he is, and you will find out what his purpose is.
Okay.
But there's a big twist at the end of this.
Is this book helpful to your clients?
I've had a lot of people kind of reach out to me and say, I can relate to this. This reminds me of what I went through. And thank you for writing it. I love the story. And everybody who's read it has really resonated with it in one way or another. And I thought that was really cool, because I didn't understand. Like, I just wanted to make a really good action adventure sci-fi type story. But then I'm starting to realize more and more that it's actually serving a higher purpose than I thought it would. So, and I think that's because it's so ingrained in my life and what I went through, because we all feel like inside of us we're destined for more, and when we kind of find out what our purpose is, it's almost like our superhero power. So I wanted to make something that was extravagant like that, to where when you do find it and discover it, you just go right after it.
Right. You let it carry you.
Yeah. It's your strength.
Dustin, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Amanda Bruns-Mills has been writing poetry for as long as she can remember, and says it was time to put all of her writings in one place. The name of her book, To the Grave.
So when I was in middle school, elementary school, I used to think, oh, I'm going to write songs for, somebody famous. And then they kind of turned more into poems. And it's just developed over years and years. And it became a goal of, I want to be published one day, more of a life goal than necessarily a career goal. So I'm super excited that I got my first book published. I hope that there's more, and I would love to be successful at that as well.
Why so much heartbreak and tears? To the Grave is the name of your book.
Yeah, it's mostly sad. So I think writing's just been a way of coping for me with really hard, difficult emotions. There's a few uplifting, happy poems in there, but not most of them are sad. So even though it's sad, like you said, I think it resonates with some people because they're like, even though they're sad feelings, just knowing someone else feels that as well is validating.
Sure.
So I'm okay with being raw and vulnerable because I think that helps people.
Because we all are at some point, right? And the biggest problem is we feel so alone.
Well, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's okay. You don't have to hide it. And they're not all about necessarily even personal to me. Again, I don't know. I think that's just how I deal with hard emotions, is I write them out like that, and that, that makes me feel better in some strange way.
Is there a favorite poem that you have? Is there a standout story behind a poem that you could share?
Well, I think that just in the past, 4 or 5 years in my life, I've had like a lot of life changes and some hard things kind of happen to me. And so the one that stands out to me is called Rock Bottom. And it says, I never thought I'd seek rock bottom because I'm just so ready to hit the bottom so I can go back up. Um, so that would be the one that would stand out to me the most.
What made you hit rock bottom? Do you talk about that in your book?
No, I mean it's a lot of heartbreak, loss, grief. Like those are themes in there, for sure. Love, but no, not the actual story. But I have thought, because several people have asked, and several of the media type people have reached out asking of maybe doing a inside the coffin book that actually goes into details of maybe what was going on.
Do you have a favorite poem you'd like to read?
Yeah, let me find one. Okay. This one's called Revelation. Took me by surprise, hazel eyes and a huge grin, rooftop fireworks, safe arms, warm skin. 2 canceled plane tickets, bright lights and ringing bells, adventures full of life, swirling numbers and tornadoes, words and feelings we didn't tell. Trying to give you time, hoping you'd see. Everyone has ghosts, but with you is where I want to be. The haunting will stop. You are a revelation for me. Just don't leave.
Love Lost. Have you been writing since you were a young girl? And did that always help you?
It did. That's what I was saying. I feel like that it's coping. And I do have a poem in here about a friend that was murdered, domestic violence. So there's a poem, about her in here as well. So they are mainly sad, or about love.
Was your intent mostly to be published? Do you want to see this go out into the big wide world?
I do.
Can you see yourself reading to people?
Yes. Yeah, I could. I mean, I don't love public speaking, but it's something I've had to do, being a therapist and being a supervisor. So it's something I can do. And then several, friends and loved ones are like, do a book signing, do a book reading. We want to come. And I did contact a couple local bookstores where I live. I live in kind of like a small town outside of Knoxville, Tennessee. And they were clueless. They don't do things like that. So the big one is Barnes and Noble, which is in Knoxville, and I probably need to go talk to the manager face to face.
How'd you feel when you got your book in the mail?
Oh, that was incredible. That was just amazing. It still feels surreal.
Any advice for people who want to write but just can't seem to get moving?
Yeah, just don't give up. Send your stuff to publishers, and keep trying, because somebody may give you a chance.
Are you going to keep writing?
Definitely. I still write. So like I said, we'll see how this book does. Publishing was a lot of work, but I would love to publish more, and I definitely have material to do it. So.
Okay. So you've saved a lot of stuff up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Over the years. Yeah, a lot of people say that, and then they just have this pile they're looking at, and they're like, what am I going to do with this?
Yeah.
Yeah. What'd you find difficult about publishing?
Just the time. It's like a slow process, I guess, but worth the wait.
Oh, good. Well, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. You have a great day.
Your Life's Puzzle is a book of short stories written by August Leo, who hopes to help people find their purpose and keep moving no matter what.
Yes, I have dyslexia, and I have bouts with depression and stress. And one thing I say about learning disability is a lot of people think that we're slow, dumb, and not so bright. So I kind of write from that aspect to let people know just because you have a learning disability, it has nothing to do with your intelligence, your ability to comprehend. The book is a collection of short stories and quotes based on things I've experienced through life. And the quotes are from philosophers, motivational speakers, and spiritual leaders. That's where all the quotes come from. It talks about depression, suicide, anxiety. So it just talks about a whole lot of different subjects. So it's not about like one particular thing. And the stories are short.
Do you talk about your experience with suicide?
There was a young lady who committed suicide. When I talk about her situation, I talk about how she would come to work, and she was all upbeat and all happy and just a real bubbly type person all day. Then I talk about how when she leaves the job, how she slipped back into depression. And, a lot of people just put on the face as though everything is well, just all smiling and happy. That's how this person was. Then one day someone told me she committed suicide. I told them, she seemed like she was so happy. She was always upbeat and smiling, always had bouncing her step at work. Then one day she just, out of the blue, committed suicide. I say because she was depressed. So that's kind of one of the stories right there.
Do you talk about your own experience? Like you say you suffer with depression?
Yes, ma'am. For us, like on days when I just feel real depressed and don't feel like getting out of bed. I remember one day I was feeling depressed. I had went to the movie theater and saw 3 movies back to back. Just spent the whole day there. Because if I wouldn't have did that, then I probably would have just stayed at the house and just got up on the covers and just stayed in all day, without coming out, just kind of isolating myself.
What do you tell people in your book?
As far as going into solitude, put your mind in a quiet and still place where you can relax when it comes to depression, so you can just spend time by yourself and just take deep breaths and breathe. I would tell people I would like go to a park or a beach or something and get to spray with beverage. I don't mean like alcoholic, like a tea or lemonade or something. And you just sit there and just breathe and just sip on that beverage and just taste every bit of it. Just try to put your mind in a quiet and calm place. And when you do that, then you'll be able to, it's for a solution to whatever problem you have, your mind in a still place. You'll be able to, solution will be able to come to whatever you're dealing with. Does that make any sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
Another point I make in the book, I write down that one quote or one short story from this book will change a person's life. Because you don't need a 300 or 400 page book just to get your point across. That's why I made this short, just simple and to the point.
How short is it?
It's I think 138 pages.
So it's like something you can carry around with you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like you're in a good place now?
Yes, ma'am. Real good place. Yes, ma'am. And like I said, as far as this book, I just hope it's a real success and people that really it's gonna help change their life. Hope and make a difference in their life. It's probably a couple hundred quotes from philosophers, psychologists, and scientists. As far as the way the mind works. That's why I get all this. I've been listening to that over 20-something years. Listening to these type of people like a guy named Dr. Wayne Darius. He was a professor, a psychologist, and philosopher. So I've been, most of the stuff I've been listening to him for over maybe 15 years or so. Him and more people's like him. So that's the majority of the things I listen to. So that's where the ideas came up to mind to put all this together in one thing from all the people that I've been listening to over my life.
And that helps you. The quotes help you.
Yes.
Listening to people helps you.
Yes, ma'am.
Who are some of the other people you listen to?
Dr. Wayne Darius and Dan Forthworth. He wrote a book called I Dare You. But that book was about people growing up poor and in poverty. Growing up poor, when they became an adult, it was a big success, owned company, starting business. And what that book was about is you can't control the environment or environmental condition you were born in, but you can't control the outcome. It's willing to work hard and you focus on your discipline. So however you were born, you can't control that, but for the outcome, you can control that if you're willing to work and focus and, you're willing to work, you can control the outcome.
That's a really good piece of advice.
Yeah, you can control the outcome. You're born poor. If you're born poor, that's not your fault. But if you stay poor, then that does become your fault because you have a chance to change about whatever you read and whatever you're putting in your mind.
Right. All right, August, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you and take care.
And finally, we join Sardar Irshad Shaheen in Pakistan, where he's a research scholar dedicated to exploring the reality of the physical world and human life for decades. The name of his book, Physics and Sufi Cosmology, Creation of Universe and Life in the Light of Science and Philosophical Spirituality, the Cosmos and the Self. Now, as far as you're concerned, there is no difference between science and spirituality. It's all connected.
My book is about the creation of universe in the light of science and philosophical spirituality. Its title is Physics and Sufi Cosmology, and it also deals with cosmos and human self. So, right from my early days, early age, school age, I was very, very inquisitive and curious about the phenomenon of existence of universe and life and the purpose of life. So I was very much interested in reading books of various disciplines, and it was actually a search for truth. So it was a journey of search for truth. So during those days, at the higher level of my education, I also faced conflicts between my social beliefs and modern science and modernity. So it compelled me or impelled me to study more and more, to do research work in an impartial manner, a free inquiry, and with impartial analysis without any bias of any religion or any other barrier. So after decades of research work, after many decades of research work, I wrote this book. So because there were conflicts not only here, but everywhere in the world, there is conflict between faith and science, between spirituality and modern science, between what is within human self and what is the outworld. So this book is a result of decades of research work, and it is a journey for search for truth.
Is there a significant finding? What is the standout of your research?
Yeah. It's a good question. So you see, there have been many books. Many books have been written, particularly in USA, by physicists like Dr. Fitzgerald Capra, who is a physicist in USA, and he found parallels between Eastern mysticism and modern science. That is modern physics and Eastern mysticism. So when I conducted detailed research, not only in physics, theoretical physics, but other disciplines of physical sciences and social sciences, I also discovered that the spiritual philosophy is not only has parallels between spiritual cosmology or cosmology of spiritual philosophers with the modern science, but it is almost compatible. So the physics and Sufi cosmology is the title of my book. Sufi cosmology means Muslim mystical philosophy. Muslim mystics are known as Sufis. The Sufi cosmologies, you will be surprised to know that it is so amazing what I have found and I have written in detail in this book, that it is amazing that around 1,000 years before this Big Bang theory, those Sufi philosophers wrote, which is almost compatible with this Big Bang theory, the creation of universe. And I have given detailed comparison. It's not just a wishful thinking. It's not just a fantasy. There is no ambiguity. I have given comparison, complete comparison, that what the stages of creation of universe from Big Bang to the structure of the universe, galaxies and the solar system and our planet, and then emergence of life. It is so compatible with those Sufi philosophers' cosmology.
You know what?
So this would mean that the perceived conflict between spirituality and modern science, or faith and science, is not real. At the deepest level, the Sufi or mystical philosophy and this quantum physics, they pass into each other and coincide. Although at a certain level, they may have different ways, but basically they are not in conflict. The faith and science is not in conflict. The spirit of faith, not the rituals, because faith is basically, religion is basically a pragmatic psychological code. The physicists have left out human psychology altogether. Physicists consider this universe a heap of dust, and they consider it as a fragmented piece of matter. So what I have discovered is that universe is not a collection of fragmented pieces of matter, and humanity is not a gathering of isolated egos, and that cosmos and human self, human psyche has integration. It has integration, and research is going on in USA also on this topic.
Yeah.
And in many other countries.
There's so much animosity between like religion and science, and God created Adam and Eve, and why couldn't God's plan be the Big Bang theory, right? Why you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It is connected. Why can't it be connected? And why can't we kind of agree that that's a possibility?
Yeah. This point of Big Bang, the point of Big Bang theory, you might be knowing, the volumeless point of Big Bang, in which all the material of this universe was dumped, condensed. Those Sufi philosophers have also been saying that they emphasize the point of creation, the point that is also volumeless, and it has all the potentialities of creation of universe. They have categorized stages, just as scientists categorized stages. There are no stages. It doesn't mean that there was some pause during the creation, but just to make people understand, they categorized. And what they said in Torah, in Bible, and in Quran, it is said that God created this universe in 6 days. But the Sufi philosophers say that 6 days means 6 stages. 6 stages. They categorize it 6 stages. And then after that, on this planet, from inanimate matter, you will be surprised that Sufi philosophers were anticipators of Darwinism. They say that from inanimate matter animate matter was created, and then it was transformed into plants, and transformed. The plants were transformed into animals, and animals were transformed into man, and man with the pride of consciousness has become a prestigious and victorious species. So this is the view of those mystical philosophers.
Mm-hmm.
And it is absolutely clear. It is not being extracted. It is not being distorted. In my book, if you happen to read it, you will be surprised and you will feel delighted. Because it is universal. The
Yeah.
Sufis and mystics have universal message of peace, universal brotherhood, and equality, and they try. They emphasize human self because they try to emphasize humanity. They try to develop a religion in general and Sufis in particular, that is mystics in particular. They try to develop our humanity, collective humanity for peace, so that our animality of man is dominated by humanity. Because our animality divides humanity, it creates strife, it creates wars. We fought 2 world wars, and we are fighting wars everywhere. So this is the domination of animality. So the pure scientific theory will give rise to a robotic concept of humanity, not humanistic view. So it is my book is has a message of interfaith harmony also.
I mean, where do you take this book? Into universities?
So I have been doing research work throughout my life, and now this book has been published, as you know, in USA, and it is a pure research work. Pure research work in the sense that it has just 233 text pages. 233 text pages, but it has around 800 citations and references of the authorities of multifarious disciplines of knowledge, including physics, biology, philosophy, psychology, sociology, anthropology, and mystical philosophy. So it has very vast area of research. And you will not find in my book the word I believe, this is my view, I understand. No, you won't find it. It's a pure research work. So what I have written is, these are the views of the scientists, philosophers, psychologists, sociologists, anthropologists, and other great authorities. So from their citations and references, I came to the conclusion that humanity and universe, they have integration, and humanity as a whole is a one complete whole. There is no division based on any religion or color or race. And likewise, this universe is meant for man, because although I have written in my book about the cosmos and human self, although human beings are claimed by the scientists that they are so insignificant. Of course, apparently we appear to be very insignificant, because in a very small point-like planet in the stunningly vast universe, it appears to be human life appears to be very, very insignificant. But human consciousness has the ability to know the laws of nature, to control and manipulate the laws of nature, to control the forces of nature, and it has the passion to conquer the universe.
Okay.
And maybe in the distant future, we will be able to conquer the universe. So, in that sense, human life is not that insignificant.
Right.
And that's why these mystics have been emphasizing in a human self.
I hope your book is read by many in the scientific,
Yeah.
the religious community. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you so much, Alice. Thank you.
Okay.
Very pleased to talk to you.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the Reader House Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. We hope to see you back here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.